take a second, and if you could download the Slido app, we're going to try to do a little bit of real-time polling and just try to make it interactive. So if you do have Wi-Fi access or access to the internet, you can download Slido just through the App Store or the Game Store or whatever, and then enter the event IC3, and we're going to use that just to sort of catalog some questions from the, so catalog a couple polls and then do some Q&A through that later on. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to this session today. So we're going to get going into this. We've got a lot of different things that we want to cover. And sort of we're excited to get into the session, but before we go, I just wanted to introduce, let our panel sort of introduce themselves. My name is Chris Coupland. I'm from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.
I'm Sarah Noppen. I'm the Director of International Admissions at Florida International University in Miami, Florida.
Good morning, I'm Kapil, and I lead marketing and outreach at Bennett University in India.
And hi, I'm Swaraj Nandan. I'm the director at KIC UnivAssist. We help universities with their international engagement.
Excellent. As people are coming in, we do have a bit more room over in the, and we have some extra chairs coming in. Yeah. So for this session, we are going to try to do a little bit of real-time polling. So for the people that are coming in, if you could download the Slido app. So Slido is just a tool to be able to do some online real-time polling as well as to aggregate some questions. The event code for Slido is IC3. Okay, so the goal of the survey is just to get a sense of where everybody's at in the room. We got a sense that there's a wide variety of things. So the first question that we have right now is, do you use a chatbot to interact with prospective students? So a quick yes, no. Okay, so, all right, 30 people so far, but 70% are currently using a chatbot. Are not. So I'm glad I got a panel here to help me out. That makes me feel better about my institution because we're not using a chatbot either, so I'd be in the no category.
Or who's using one, but it's bad?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, all right. If it's bad, we'll put that as a no. Okay.
It can be improved.
Okay, the next question, have you had discussions at your home institution about how to utilize AI, machine learning, or blockchain? So we're going to be talking about a lot of different things today. Some of them are interchangeable, but for right now, any discussions about any of these three things? Okay, oh wow. Okay, again, so about 3/4 no, and about 25% yes. Yeah, this should be a good discussion then today. Yeah. Okay, and then our last question. Okay, and then does AI and machine learning have a role to play in recruitment, admission, enrollment activities, scale of 1 to 5? 5 is absolutely, 1 means never. Just a sense of what that looks like. And apologies for the order. Okay. So 75% haven't had any discussions, but about over 80% of the people in the room are feeling like this is where the future's going. So, which is probably to lead us into, if we can get back to the slideshow, which is really the foundation of where the session came from. Me and my fellow panelists, we've really been having conversations about this in coffee sessions, chats where like what's going to happen in the future, but really it's not about the future. A lot of what we're going to talk about is technology that exists right now. And as an industry, where are we heading and how are we going to utilize these technologies and what does it mean for the work that we're going to do? So we're going to go through a little bit of a background on what these things are. Then we have a couple case studies, but really what we wanted to get out of this discussion is to hear from you and hear what some of the questions and concerns are. And so we will leave a lot of time for discussion. On the Slido app, there is a chance to be able to enter questions. So if you have a question that comes up in your mind during the session, you can type that question into the Slido app. We will aggregate all of those, and then we'll use that to sort of as a jumping off point for the Q&A at a later point. For me, what really sparked my interest in this were two different announcements that have happened over the past few years. One, when LinkedIn purchased lynda.com, which is an online sort of education tool, you can take individual courses. That sort of, the combination of the social media platform owning an education tool that can then, start to identify your work history and say, if you want to be, competitive for a certain job, pick up this additional skill, and these are all the jobs that will become open to you. And then, by the way, you can take that course through lynda.com. That seems like the combination of a lot of very powerful tools and things that haven't existed before. And when you think about the data that both LinkedIn has and lynda.com, that really starts to challenge what we think of when we think of traditional education. The other thing that really caught my attention last year, one of the biggest online educators in Canada, Athabasca University, announced that they partnered with Amazon for all of their services. So Athabasca University, which provides online education at degree level, so university degree granting institution in Canada, will be moving its entire IT infrastructure and its course delivery over to Amazon Web Services. So now, when you go on to buy a pair of sneakers, are they going to start to say, you might also be interested in taking this course? Those are some of the possibilities that, wondering where is this going to go? And so that's the discussion that we want to have today. So I think I've taken up plenty of time so far. I'm going to switch it over to Swaraj, and he's going to take us through what some of these things are and the definitions, a little bit of background.
And again, this session, as Chris mentioned, is by no means prescriptive. We're not here to tell you what to do, but we have more questions than answers. And hopefully we're thinking that it'll drive discussion, that we can answer these things together. But we can run you through some case studies and some examples of what others are doing that'll probably help. Yeah. So what is artificial intelligence? This is the Oxford Dictionary definition. The theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. And now those are being done by machines. So that is what typically artificial intelligence is. But the difference is with machine learning, the machines are learning by themselves and applying it much better than what a human could. And we have some more chairs here if you'd like to sit. AI trends, and many of you would have come across, I'm not going to go through the definitions, but virtual reality, robotics, chatbots, predictive analysis, heat maps, gamification, blockchain. These are terms that we come across almost now on an everyday basis. And I'm just assuming that most of you are aware of these. As we heard, 70% of you are not using them, but almost 80% of you want to use many of these things as we go in here. Blockchain, again, Sarah's going to get more into it, but it's the technological innovation behind Bitcoin, with the idea that the information is stored in millions of different computers, and it can be pulled by the person who owns the information. Specifically, this has been discussed from an education standpoint in the field of credentialing, where today the credentials are owned by the institution that actually offers it, but in the future it'll be owned by the person. So if you completed a degree, now you own the degree, and so if somebody requests it, you have the power of giving it, not the registrar. Right? So it has implications not only for the individuals, but it has implications for all institutions. And this morning we were having a discussion. The important thing is everybody has to buy into it for it to work. If a certain thing does, if a few institutions don't buy into it, that's a problem. If they keep continuing, everybody has to buy into it. Some quotes by our beloved Vladimir Putin, right? The country that controls artificial intelligence will control the world. So it is coming, and it is the future. According to some reports, specifically to the US education sector, this field will be growing by about 58% between 2017 and 2021. So the growth is coming. We all know, since so many of us are interested, that grow, but in what form? Let's get into some of those. So the AI applications, there are many applications to the entire funnel. And when I talk about the funnel, I really specifically think about the pre-application, application, admission, yield, retention, satisfaction, and career success, right? Those are the different stages. Pre-application, many of you are right now on the road, but the questions from those students haven't stopped coming. Don't you almost wish you had a virtual assistant who was answering those simple emails, those general questions, and only the 10% that required your human interaction were the ones that you needed to answer, those emails when you get back to your room at 1 a.m. in the morning, right? So chatbots application, actually chatbots are not only being used there, I have some examples where they're being used at different parts of this funnel. In terms of application, we'll hear from Kapil that he's getting many applications. And so one, in terms of making sure that you're attracting the right kid to apply, and I don't know if you're going to dissuade the wrong kid from applying. So that's another thing, question to think about. And then from an admission standpoint, we look at GPAs, we read we read essays, we have standardized test scores. All of those things need to be analyzed today in terms of holistic admissions. Can we actually have the machines do that and then predict how we would have decided on that application and make that decision? Happening, and we'll also discuss some pros and cons, pitfalls that we need to watch out for. Yield specifically has great implications, one on revenue, two on internal human resource allocation. So if you yield 10% less, now suddenly you need 10% less faculty, or thereabouts, right? Big implications for housing, and those are significant dollars. So the yield piece is, and I know for many of us, is super important because that is really going to make or break that year. It's not the admits; it's really how many do we bring in. So I will give you some examples of chatbots being used in this particular stage. Then retention and satisfaction. We of course want to maximize retention, and then that means course matching. If the student is unclear, performance tracking, and then there are some other examples on how AI has been actually able to see where a student may struggle, and then predict it before so that you could be helped at the right time, versus them ending up either dropping out of the course completely. And then finally, career success. And there are different tools that are being used from a career matching standpoint in terms of predictive analysis of where a person would be a better fit. So, so again, different tools in different stages are going to give us more efficiency in terms of human resource use, and also the time implication of how quickly can we get back to these students. Why schools are using AI, streamline the application process and level the playing field. Again, big questions out there, whether it's actually going to level the playing field. And as we said, it's going to help you make select decisions and application recommendations easily. So it says. It's finally, at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. That's all we, all of us do. And from a machine learning standpoint, we can do that to mitigate over and under enrollment. Again, that's on paper, right? So it'll be only as good as the predictive modeling that's put in. There has also been, quite a discussion in terms of the subjectivity that's involved in application decisions. And, when I was growing up, there was a thing that said garbage in, garbage out. So a lot of these models are actually being put together based on the decisions that have been taken in the past. And if those decisions have been subjective, the model that you build will be subjective. And so essentially that's one of the biggest pitfalls is if your model doesn't deliver on what you intended it to, you're not going to get the results that you wanted. The second thing that we really need to think about is if the code always gets the same kind of kid in, where's the diversity in class? Maybe we'll have 100 of those kids look the same. So that's the other piece. How will these models be built and account for the kind of class we want to bring in? So that's Yeah, yeah. Let me just make sure I'm just giving you the key ones. Summer melt. So I wanted to give you this example. So, so Georgia State University actually used this chatbot. It's called Pounce. This was based on their mascot. And what they did is, this was not used at the initial stage. It was actually used post-admit stage. What they did was, the chatbot almost answered 200,000 queries that came in. On post-analysis, they found out that most of these kids who were coming in and using the chat or interacting with the chatbot were actually lower income kids or first-generation kids. And the thing was, they had an inherent fear of actually getting on the phone with someone to get an answer. What they found out is their yield actually increased 22%. So the melt was reduced 22% by using the chatbot. They were so happy with the results that they actually continued that chatbot, and they applied it to post admission phase to answer simple queries like where can I pay my parking ticket, etc. And interestingly, they also found that, so this is for existing students, and they found that increased attendance on campus by 30% for those kids. They only tested it on 4,000 students, not the whole class, but they're seeing some really new success. So things to think about in terms of how you may be able to apply chatbots on different things. I don't know if Dakota is here, but actually University of Oklahoma also has a chatbot. And they have a different kind of a chatbot. So this chatbot, depending on how the user is interacting with your website, and you ask the question, but the person doesn't know where that answer is on your website. So it sort of acts like a web crawler and points you in the right direction. So once you ask the question, it's almost like a automated search functionality, think about it, but with more accuracy. So that's how it predicts. And think about FAQs that you have on your websites. As more kids start interacting with it, and you suddenly find that an FAQ that's number 10 is the one that they're really looking for, would you not want to bring that up? So simple things that we could be thinking of in terms of application that can really help you. And then, of course, there was Taylor University that was also trying to do things about distributing financial aid. So if you can be more accurately predicting what level of financial aid may bring a certain kid in, we may be able to take money from someone who doesn't need it and give it to someone who needs it. So again, as AI takes over, we may be able to make such decisions. Again, I was talking about biases. So if there is an inherent bias in our current system, those are going to be replicated. So that's the biggest piece, because some of these decisions are so subjective. We're going to probably just continue that. And then there is a automation bias. The articles that we read basically said that people think that when it is automated, when technology is actually decisioning it, there is no subjectivity, that it is fair, because it's not a human that is interacting with it. But on the back end, if we have coded it based on human biases, that's a problem. The second thing that we were talking about this morning is, once those decisions are taken, and now suddenly someone questions it, how are you going to be able to give them the background of how those two people were decisioned in two different times?
Yeah, I was thinking about this in terms of, I'm often asked questions on, like, how did somebody get an offer, or how did somebody not? Actually, it's more often, why did somebody not get an offer? And when somebody hasn't received an offer, we often hear from students and parents, more particularly, like, okay, you're going to hear from my lawyer, and you can explain why they didn't get an offer, because their classmate Billy did get an offer, and Susie is such a better student than Billy, right? Right now in our admission processes, I can pretty quickly and accurately explain exactly how one offer was made and maybe why another offer wasn't made, right? So we have a lot of detail in that regard. Can pull up the file. I can go and talk to the admission coordinator who made that decision and understand why these things happened, right? So we can detail that appropriately and be able to, give the person, they might not be satisfied with the fact an offer wasn't made, but we can at least provide very sound rationale behind it. In the future, if things are being done by AI, do we print out the code? And do we share that? Is that proprietary? How does that work, right? And how does that give confidence to the people that are interacting with our institutions that the decisions that we are making are equitable and fair? So those are just some of the things that we were chatting about as a group.
Right. And one other thing that I read was grade inflation. So typically humans, when they know that a certain school is known for inflating grades, they adjust it accordingly. And this changes on a yearly basis. So once it's coded, that thing may not be adjusted by the machines unless there's a human who's manually sort of giving those inputs to the machines. And then this was so funny. This was one of the institutions where a hacker got into the chatbot and actually coded an answer. So every time a person would ask a question, an answer would pop up saying, if you have to ask a question, you're probably not good enough to get into this institution. So things about when we put all this power into systems, really the security, the cybersecurity, everything has to go along with it. So at this time, I'm just going to, interest of time, just pass it on.
All right, so I'll share a little bit of information about what we're doing at FIU. So I'm happy to hear that we are kind of where you all are, but maybe just a little more advanced, so yay. So right now, our current systems, we use PeopleSoft and ImageNow, and part of the reason why we're starting to look at AI technology and machine learning is because these systems for us is quite inflexible. So it doesn't really allow us to do the things that we want to do and to make better decisions. Our Salesforce, we do use Salesforce and Kunami, which is our queuing system for students that come in. It's great, but it also doesn't really work for our international populations. It's been primarily tweaked to work with our domestic population. So even though it is a good system, it still doesn't quite work for us. We do have our own homegrown chatbot. And it's supposed to work like the web crawler, and we're also supposed to see what kind of questions students are asking so that we can go back in and add more information, but we're not getting this information in a timely manner. We also don't think students trust it. So also because I think perhaps we haven't done a lot of work in making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So even though it's there and it exists, we still see infinite many more students call, especially on the domestic side, and use our other options, which is Unibuddy and WhatsApp, because they want to feel like they're having human interaction. So we're not going to get away from the human interaction, absolutely not. But through these technologies, we'll be able to spend more time interacting with the students we know are really, truly interested in our institutions. So, and there's a lot of silos, obviously, in each of our institutions. So these are just the things that we interact with. This doesn't even talk about what all the other enrollment management offices are interacting with or what our friends over in the academic side. And we are all challenged with this. We have all of these technologies, but how do we fit them all together? And it's really that buy-in that we're kind of missing. So as we go further to try to figure out how to make these technologies work, we're going to have to work across those silos. So we're looking at this new software called Brainware. I don't know if you have heard about it, but we've received a ton of applications. We have about 55,000 students on our campus. We are the 4th largest institution. So, and we're primarily a transfer. About 50% of our incoming class each year will be transfer students. So transfers, of course, want to know one thing, right? How much of my credits are going to transfer? And most of those applicants want to have that immediately upon making a decision prior to their matriculation. But when you have such a huge influx and you're not getting those transcripts through EDI or other kinds of mechanisms and you have to upload them, how do you do that efficiently? So that's our friends over in our transfer and transition office, and they're actually manually inputting all of those transcripts. So we really only do that at the point of matriculation, which is not when the students want to know, right? So they're making decisions, but not on the best information. So we've looked into this product called Brainware, which is an AI or machine learning that will help us take the folks, it's about 7 of them that do all the data entry for those transcripts that we get hard copy. And instead of doing the data entry, it will scan everything for us. And that person now will be retooled to review the transcript and make sure that what was input was correct. But that also means they can do it faster, they can do it more efficiently, and the system learns. So once we receive one transcript from one institution, they'll never have to look at it again. So that way, we're going from perhaps 7 people to 2 people, but that goes down to then the retraining and retooling those folks. We also have, because we're so large, we are very transparent in our admission process, both at the undergraduate, freshman, and the transfer criteria. So if you have a GPA that meets our criteria and a test score that meets our criteria, you're in. That's it. So we get away from some of those ethical issues by having a very straightforward and transparent admission process. But at the same time, we are also interested in rankings. We are not as well known as we would like to be, and we are not perhaps positioned where we think we should be as far as the quality of our programs. So what does that mean? We've raised our test scores. We've raised our GPA. Our incoming freshman class will have a 1290 average SAT score and a 4.2 GPA. What has that done to our incoming class? It's made it more affluent and made it wider. We don't want to do that because FIU is the largest Hispanic serving institution in the US. So we want to remain true to the folks that we serve, but we also know that test scores, as they go up, what do they become? More affluent, they become wider. So we want to make sure that we're not doing those things. So that's where we get to this automated admission process that looks at a large number of data points. We know we have all this information. We get it from financial aid, we get it from a variety of sources. So what we have done, and we hope to implement this in the next 18 months, we got a brain trust of some really smart people in a room, and started throwing all of our data sources with our, of course, institutional research friends, because you can't do it without them, up on a whiteboard and said, what's most important to us and how do we want to make those decisions? So that way we can go back and say, okay, we're mid-cycle, we're seeing those numbers come in, and for us, Pell eligibility, at least on the domestic side, is one of the metrics that we're measured against at the state. So we want to make sure it doesn't drop, because if it drops, we'll lose some funding. That's obviously important. So we can then transition what we're doing in the admission process mid-cycle. We can make better decisions because the amount of data that we have put in the system is there to help us make those better decisions. We also have a more, again, as a transparent admission process, we have a variety of access points for students. So if you don't make it into our fall term, because of course that's where we're graded against, shall we say, you can get into our early summer, which starts 6 weeks before, or you can get into spring. So we're still trying to provide those access points to our students, knowing that as we become more competitive, we're going to have these challenges. We're also thinking about outsourcing, because we can't do it all by ourselves. We know that we can't. We have a great Salesforce integration, but it doesn't work for us. We're on the road. We just don't have the manpower. So how can we then look at outsourcing opportunities? We've already done this on the domestic side. We've outsourced all of our financial aid calls, all of them, because we were only handling about 20% of them incoming. Our call center was overwhelmed, always overwhelmed. But then that also creates mistrust with our student population. So not only would their parents and them and their friends perhaps be on our call line, but they would also be in person and chatting, our live chat, and then also on our chatbot. So we don't really know what our statistics will look like, because we've artificially inflated them as well. So we're not able to handle all that. So we started to look at outsourcing as well, because other people are doing this stuff better than us, so we can use their AI, we can use their things that they've already done, and then hopefully slowly integrate them back in. But then, of course, that leads us back to that training and retooling. So what are those 7 people going to do when we only need 2? Well, we hope that, of course, attrition and retirement helps train, retool those positions, but it won't always. So making sure that we are clear in our expectations about what this means for those folks and where we can find alternative positions for them within enrollment management and services, because we certainly need these people. We just need to be able to then make them take them from doing machine jobs to doing people jobs, because that's where we will ultimately need them. And with that, I'll turn it on over.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, so if we had used an AI system here, Swaraj, we would be able to accurately predict the number of chairs we needed by the behavior of the audience over the last 2 days. What are the kind of sessions you've attended? Have you been interested in technology? So I think by next year, we should have that solution in place here. Extending this conversation further, we looked into the timeline. So these technologies good to have. Some of them may intimidate us. Some of them may worry us. There's already been a lot of discussion about jobless growth, robots and AI taking over many jobs, at least the entry-level jobs. So how soon will this impact us? Many of these will become mainstream, but their adoption, depth of adoption, everything will be very, very different. So we just put together this quick table on how this will move, and I'll just move to the side for a second. So essentially, for the last 5 or maybe 10 years, we've been using data analysis and business intelligence, which was the kind of entry-level analytics. using Excel and various other BI tools that we have had. Going forward, there are two large pieces of technology which will impact our lives. One is AI, which will also have applications in machine learning. So AI is the computers being able to process a huge amount of information to give you decisions. Machine learning is the machine going further and training itself and improving itself over and over again. So blockchain essentially is a slightly longer term play. So there will be some applications. So credentialing and transcript management we may begin to see applications, wide applications for that in say 3 to 5 years time. Intellectual property protection, because a lot of knowledge gets created in the universities, a lot of IP gets generated, and it's always at the risk of plagiarism and getting copied. So IP protection may come in 5 to 10 years time. Payments using cryptocurrencies, again, anywhere between 3 to 10 year kind of a game. Distributed cloud storage may happen in the near future. Expansion of MOOCs, wider distribution of MOOCs, that may happen. So all these will kind of come in. But the underlying thing about blockchain is it's inherently a community initiative. The systems have to be distributed, and it has to have a wider application and a wider acceptance from the larger community. Maybe at the national level or a global level for that entire system to work. For example, in India we have 900 universities. Just 30 universities cannot get into the accepting credentialing on blockchain, because you'll not even have the base. It's only when a certain population of universities, say at least half the universities, begin to use it, that will become mainstream, and people will begin to kind of provide their information there. One thing, university operations in blockchain technology, that may never happen, because by the time we react, the university administration reacts to some of these technological changes, it will take forever. Coming to AI, so some of the applications we've already spoken about, identifying potential dropouts, already happening. So like we said, we've been using data to analyze for a while now. But the challenge that we will face in India in particular, to a larger degree than the US, is AI requires humongous amount of data, and the application firm can give you only so much. Even if student agrees to give us their social media profiles, can give us so much. There are only so many data points that we have in India. In India, you'll never get demographic data. In India, you'll never get socio-economic profiles. You'll never get many other data points or financial aid or income criteria to kind of go into the system to make those intelligent decisions. So in India, it's slightly a longer term game. But identifying potential dropouts, predictive analysis about enrollments, virtual reality in education, all this will happen in the next anywhere between 0 to 5 years time.